welcome, and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking about dreams. I know that many of us, as we approach midlife, are thinking to ourselves, what are those things that we long to do in our entire lives that we just haven't fulfilled yet? Perhaps you felt that some of these things that you thought about were just impossible or too far out of our reach. Well, as I read once, they said that if you're able to achieve all of your dreams in your lifetime, then your dreams just aren't big enough. On our program today, we're going to be finding out about one particular story of someone who chased his particular dream of becoming someone involved in the NFL, actually making a life and a career out of it. What a dream to pursue there. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is author of the book, Whatever It Takes. Our guest, Daniel Kelly, is joining us. He's going to talk about what it is of a fan making it into the NFL. Daniel, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Daniel. Thank you for having me on your show today.
You betcha. Now, this is a great story because, a lot of people, of course, you look at the self-help industry, it's full of books laden with all these secrets about what it takes to get what you want. But the truth is, it just takes good old-fashioned patience and persistence. And that's really what your story is all about.
Absolutely, Daniel. And to our listeners out there, from the time I was just a little kid, I grew up a fanatical fan of the Washington Redskins. It was kind of love at first sight when I was 8 years old, watching John Riggins run the ball, and I just fell in love with the Redskins and with football in general. And throughout the years, my passion continued to grow and grow. And one day I dreamt of playing linebacker in the NFL, but I never got big enough to do that. So I kept up with the Redskins, followed them throughout all the years of when they played back in the 80s under Joe Gibbs, and they had Bobby Beathard as their general manager. And I used to write letters to all the coaches and players when I was a kid, every training camp, and they'd write back and appreciate my letters and stuff, and had a chance to meet the entire Redskins team when I was just a kid when they came to Minnesota to play the Vikings. That's where I'm originally from. And just a real involvement, something that's kind of unusual and kind of foreign to today, but the team really got involved in my life and encouraged me and sent me letters to encourage me, which are in the book. And, passion just continued growing, and I finally got a chance to give playing football a chance when I was a junior in high school. I wasn't any good at it, though. I dropped one interception and mostly spent most of my time on the bench, but still I had a dream. And at my 17th birthday, I was given a book called Secrets of NFL Scout, written by Tony Rizzano, the 49ers director of personnel, who built all those great 49ers teams in the 80s, if you recall, with Joe Montana and all those guys. And it was love at first sight. I said, that's what I want to be. I want to be an NFL scout. Well, I wish it was that easy.
Right.
Because from that point, I started, watching college football games on TV, recording the games, and writing scouting reports, sending them off to Redskins general manager at the time, Charlie Castle. He kept saying, hey, why don't you wait until after your first year of college? You're still too young. And so I just kept at it, and I barely passed through high school because I was so focused on football. And then in college, I dropped out and failed out of college after 1 year, but I still didn't give up. I just kept at it, and then eventually I was working at Bank of America Mortgage as a loan officer. I what am I doing here? I got to give my dream one last chance. And so all these ideas started popping in my head about, writing scouting reports with my little satellite dish. I ended up working all day at the bank and scouting all night, and it turned into be a 350-page NFL draft guide that I got self-published after 7 months of a lot of work, and sent that into every team in the NFL with my resume, and that's when the call came from the New York Jets.
And it's interesting because how you pursued your dream was, it's a great way that just makes a lot of sense. You immersed yourself into the culture. A lot of times people will say, this is something I've always wanted to do, I really want to do, and you can ask the simple question, well, what are you doing about it? And, they might peck on it a little bit on the outside. They might think about it. They may take one small action in it. But you actually started off as a child where, there you were, as you said, you were writing letters. You actually met up with one of the team players at a hotel. You got to meet the whole team, and they were all signing your posters. As you said, that was kind of a different time. But you were immersed in the culture, and so it was feeding your dream. It made it very real instead of distant, and that's a real big difference.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Just kept at it, kept at it. I mean, I always tell people that I'm a kid from, I was a kid in a small town growing up. Nobody really gave much of my, dream a chance. I remember my high school yearbook, when I started telling all the kids in school, I'm going to be an NFL scout, they, wrote, yeah, right, in my high school yearbook. And I had a lot of things against me growing up, and a lot of people that didn't believe in me. But, I just kept at it. It was an inner dream. And if any of you out there have an inner dream and you can visualize something, it's a vision. I read a quote once that said that never let go of something that you think about every day. And
Right.
there's something to that effect. And so that was really the story. But you're right, Daniel. I mean, it's, just something that, I just continued to work at. And it was interesting because a couple of years ago I had a chance to be a guest speaker at the NFL Scouting Combine, speaking to a group of aspiring scouts and sports agents and stuff. And so many people came up to me after I got done speaking. And it was really interesting because a lot of people, they paid the money to be there. They said they wanted to be a scout in the NFL. But I really didn't feel in my heart or sense that this is something they really believe they can do. But believe you and me, and I mean, if I could do this, anybody can do this. And, there's nothing in the world that said I should have made it into the NFL. I mean, I was working at Bank of America as a loan officer, and I got hired on one of the best staffs in NFL history.
Right. And there it is. It's whether or not, in fact, here it is. There was a kid that I talked with. This was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And he was in high school at the time. I think he was in his senior year of high school. And his dream is that he wanted to be a broadcaster for the Chicago Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in broadcasting at the time, and I said, "Well, then go do it." And I said, "Here's what you should do: connect with that team in any way, shape, and form that you can, so that you're immersed in the culture. I don't care what it takes. You just keep knocking at the door. I don't care if you have to mop the floors in the hallways of, Staples Arena. It doesn't matter, whatever it takes."
Mm-hmm.
I said, in the meantime, what you want to do is you want to get practice so you become good. And what you do is you go and you broadcast high school basketball games, college basketball games, any game you can get your mouth and your mic around. And, and these were just real simple practical steps that I suggested that he takes. He did probably a little bit of an internship for the college that he was at, broadcasting, a game or two of theirs. And that's about as far as his dream really went. None of the classes that I know of that he took in college had anything to do with broadcasting. And today I think he works as a retail clerk, in a store somewhere. And that's what I mean is a lot of times, and I think what I'm pointing at here, and I don't know if this was intentional on his part, but in America, people seem to have this feeling that they're just entitled to get something just simply because they want it. And that's not the way the American dream really works. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's not. I mean, it takes a lot of hard work and perseverance. A lot of you can't quit. You just got to keep going. I've always told people that if you have the vision, then you can do it and you can go for it. You can accomplish it. And even if there's nobody or nothing all around you that says that you can do it, you can. And you're exactly right. I mean, it's if you with what you're explaining there about the guy that wanted to be on the radio, you just got to get into it and do everything you possibly can, no matter what. I mean, I did so many different things. I worked a little bit with an arena football team for no pay. I worked, I tried to moonlighting as a sports agent. I quickly learned that 4% of nothing is nothing. When none of my guys got signed, and I just kept at it and kept doing different things, and the American dream, getting a chance to live your dreams, it just takes a lot of hard work and perseverance. And no matter what age you are, right now, if you have a dream and it's something that's on your mind, you can do it. I mean, if I can make it into the NFL from nowhere, anybody can do anything. Anything is possible.
Mm-hmm. Now tell us, Daniel, what is the NFL like, especially in the capacity that you work as a scout? It's a dream job, but there's no doubt about it. There is a lot of hard work involved with something like that.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, it was pretty typical for me. Once I got into the Jets organization, it was pretty typical to be working 80, 90, 100 hours a week. We really didn't have a clock we looked at. It was just a lot of work, doing a lot of different things. One of the thoughts I had was, growing up, I thought, and maybe it was this way back in the day, but the season ends and everyone kind of, takes it easy the rest of the year until the season starts up again. That is not the case in the NFL. This is year round. I mean, you go right from the season into starting to look at free agency, and you go into the combine and mini camps and training camps, and all these special projects, and I mean, it's just always something to do, and it's a lot of work, and you know, especially being with the Jets, being with the likes of Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick and those guys I had the privilege of working with, everything runs just like a fine-oiled machine. Everything is very precision. Everything is put together. Everything's very structured, and you know, you just got to find your groove in it and just work really hard. But it was absolutely amazing to be around. When I first got into the building for my interview, you know, I walked in. The front cover of my book is a picture of that Super Bowl trophy. That's the first thing I saw when I walked in the door. And you know, walking down the hallway and seeing all the names, and our personnel scouting director was Dick Haley, who built all 4 Super Bowl teams back in the 70s with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He mentored me when I was there. You know, just seeing all these names I grew up watching. And then, of course, you know, meeting Coach Parcells and Coach Belichick and everything was just unreal. And, you know, being out of practice, seeing guys like LT, Lawrence Taylor would come by and be a special guest speaker. And you know, I saw Joe Namath walking down the hallway, and it's just, you know, you're around this stuff. And of course, the fan in me, you know, I knew all these guys growing up and stuff. But it's an unbelievable amount of work. It's an incredible experience, and it's a memory of a lifetime for me.
You know, and I think what's exciting, and I'm certain that you can appreciate this too, is that you're around all of this greatness. And at first it's very surreal. You think, you know, what am I doing here? I don't belong on the same planet with these people. This is, you know, because you're so used to seeing them on television, on the big screen, you know, it's separated worlds away. But even as a broadcaster, I've spoke to many of the rich and famous and the celebrities and everybody, you know. And at first it was surreal, but after a while you realize, you know, these are just people, and the illusion changes for people, for instance, like you and myself, and you get to the other side of the mirror and you realize this is just business. This is just the way it is. But at the end of the day, they go home and they eat their breakfast, lunch, and dinner just like everybody else.
Yeah, there's no question about that. What you're saying, Daniel, is so true. When I first got there, I mean, in my interview, when the door opened up, I had to sit down and type up a scouting report on one of their players as part of my interview, and in walked Bill Parcells into the room, and I'm thinking to myself, yep. He's like, hello, I'm Coach Parcells. I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, I know who you are. You know, you're the guy that used to dump Gatorade over your head in the games, and you know, so I mean, being around those guys, I remember being my first NFL scouting combine. I walked down in the RCA building in Indianapolis. There was Bill Walsh standing there. I sat next to Al Davis and Jackie Slater and Eric Dickerson watching the workouts, and you know, I was around. I mean, you name the person in the NFL, I was around them. And you know, for the first few years, you know, I really kind of had that, you know, like you were saying, kind of that feeling of just being in awe and just kind of starstruck by everything. But over the years, especially when I've gone back to do guest speaking at the NFL Combine, I've gone down to the Senior Bowl a couple times down in Mobile, Alabama. Being around these guys, it feels more like I fit in, but it does take some adjusting. It does definitely, like you're describing.
And I wanted to bring that up because a lot of times I think people have difficulty achieving the big dreams because maybe down inside we picked up something where we feel we just don't deserve it. Did you ever feel that?
In a way,
right.
Especially I think when I got there, I think that's when really kind of hit me. I never really felt like I mentioned, like I fit in when I was there. Mm-hmm. You know, I kind of felt like that distant cousin, kind of. You know, it was just kind of a weird feeling for quite a while there.
Mm-hmm. You know, I wondered that because when you take a look as you were growing up and, you know, being the Redskins fan, in your book you talk about how your grandmother was just as in love with the team as you were. You know, she supported, even bought you the Super Bowl ticket for your graduation gift. But yet at the same time, you know, your father, you know, wasn't very supportive. In fact, sometimes, you know, the relationship just wasn't so good a lot of the times. And then, of course, your mother was a Minnesota Vikings fan. And, of course, you were taking a lot of heat from, you know, your town, your school, you know, comrades, the like, you know. And so you kind of think to yourself as you get to that point, you know, what am I doing here? That peer pressure can be pretty rough sometimes. And that's where I thought of the underlying thought of, you know, you're achieving or you're trying to achieve your dream. But inside, because you take those kind of beatings, you feel like, well, I don't deserve it. And sometimes people, when they get to that point, they'll actually sabotage their own success.
Yeah, they really will, Daniel, and you're exactly right. When I was growing up, I mean, they're really, outside of my grandma, I mean, she was amazing. And if anybody out there has somebody in your life like this, you're truly blessed. I mean, she always told me, encouraged me, and she said, you know, you can do this, you can make it to your dream. And you know, that's the first phone call I made when I got a call from Scott Pioli when I got hired by the New York Jets, and he said, welcome aboard, you're the newest member of the New York Jets. I mean, that's the first person I called. But outside of her, you're right. My dad, the school I went to, my mom always heckling me about the Vikings. I mean, there wasn't a kid in my school. I mean, the Redskins were in their heyday. They were winning Super Bowls, and there wasn't a kid in my school that would ever admit to liking the Washington Redskins because of me. So, you know, I mean, everybody wanted to come out of the woodwork when they lost games. But I look back at that time, Daniel, and I can really see that prepared me in a lot of ways because you have to, you know, working with a staff like I worked with, you have to have real tough skin and you know, you have to have the ability to persevere and work through some things. And so I can really look back at my upbringing and everything that happened, and I can say, you know what, that really prepared me. And I think that's true for all of our lives. I think, you know, that's something that when we look back, and it's like playing connect the dot when I look back at my life, it's like, you know what, that was pretty hard to go through that. That was pretty tough. But, you know, bottom line is that, you know, our backgrounds really prepare us for the journey and for our dreams.
Now, in the NFL, you know, because it's a professional business, so to speak, were there some wake-up calls for you as far as the experience go about, boy, this really is about business, where you felt like, you know, these are people here that are involved, but certainly it's on a whole different level.
It really is. The business side was really a disillusioning part for me to be in the National Football League. You know, I grew up just absolutely passionate about winning and trying to get to the Super Bowl and becoming an NFL GM and all that. And I started to see in the business side, I mean, it's like, you know, growing up, I always thought, you know, well, you know, this team hates this team, and, you know, the Redskins and Cowboys hate each other, and the Packers and Bears want to rip each other's helmets off, like Dick Butkus used to talk about stuff like that. But, you know, I got into the, you know, the Combine, the RCA Dome, you know, I started looking around and started seeing, you know, all these guys with different shirts on, you know, shaking hands and kissing babies, as the old saying goes, and glad-handing each other, and it's one big fraternity. And I think that was the greatest irony for me being in the NFL was that, you know, we're all cheering for our teams, but really and truly, a lot of the people inside the game are kind of cheering for themselves and the paycheck, and so that was disillusioning for me in the business side. Some decisions made from the business standpoint. You know, hey, we gotta take care of this agent because you know, we got big negotiations coming up next year on this guy, and you know, the guy may not be the best player in the world, but you know, there was some politics to it that didn't resonate with me too well.
I wanted to bring that up because I'm sure that, you know, there are some people out there listening now who've seen, for instance, the movie Moneyball, and, you know, which was a fascinating movie about baseball and the inner workings of how a particular GM built a team around statistics, and the idea that sometimes here's a guy grooving into his season, the next thing you know, he's sending them down, you know, and they end up going somewhere else or they get out of the league altogether. And that must have been, you know, like, for instance, you know, as a scout, you're kind of involved with some of those decisions. What was that like?
It was very interesting. I mean, I did a lot of the background work, you know, analysis stuff for a lot of those type of decisions. I made a lot of highlight tapes and things like that. So I was definitely involved in the process. But when it came right down to making the decisions, there was no mistake about it. There was one voice in that building, and that was Coach Parcells.
You know, did you see any really difficult decisions where you just kind of felt like, oh, man, I don't know if I can get through this?
Well, the most difficult thing for me was during my first season or two in the NFL, the Jets asked me to go over to the dorm rooms and, you know, knock on the guys' doors and tell them if any of you have ever seen that, where they knock on the doors and say, you know, bring your playbook, coach wants to see you.
Oh, no.
The job of the Turk, if you've ever seen that. that was me, and that was really tough for me because, I mean, this is my dream, this, you know, making it to the NFL, and there I was, and I know these guys all had worked really super hard to get to where they're at.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, to be the guy that, you know, I remember one guy in particular named Casey Daly, was a linebacker we had, and he got hurt in camp, and he was on crutches, and I went up to his door and knocked on his door and said, hey, bring your playbook, coach wants to see you. And, you know, I mean, it's just, you look really somber. And, you know, it was a really tough day for me. And I remember Mr. Haley, who's, again, the guy that built all the Super Bowl teams in the 70s with the Steelers. He mentored me in a lot of ways. And I remember, you know, I brought one of the guys in to talk to him and Coach Parcells. And And he pulled me aside, and I said, he goes, how are you doing? And I said, well, this is really tough for me. And he goes, listen, he goes, this is the toughest part of the business, and it never gets easier.
Oh, I'm sure. And there it is, because the bigger your dream, the bigger the responsibility, and sometimes the bigger the tough choices get. Are you willing to do that?
Yeah, no, that's the absolute truth there. There are a lot of tough decisions that go on in the NFL, especially with roster cut downs and everything that goes on inside the game.
I just had that vision of the movie Major League. I don't know if you remember that movie, but that's a fun one. Tom Berenger, where there they are at the spring training, and the cuts are starting to come around the corner. If you open your locker and see a pink ticket hanging in your locker, you're done. Just imagine the knock on the door, bring your pet playbook the coach wants to see. You can just feel that sinking feeling, because these guys do work incredibly hard. I was describing to my wife, if anybody has ever been an athlete, has ever played in a team sport, think of how hard it was to play to a level where you got to start, for instance, on a little league team or a high school basketball team, which was the sport that I played. Then you got to consider being good enough to go to college, even on a scholarship. Then being good enough just to be on the bench, then being good enough to be the sixth man or be good enough to start the game. Then you think of a whole new level of, for instance, the NBA, and this is just my own analogies, but you think of these same things, with football, kind of work and commitment and dedication that these guys put in, and that's just to see if you could make it into the basic pay plan, let alone be, the kind of work it does. So, to be around greatness like that, that must really transfer into your life and how you can influence, for instance, your own family and even your friends around you.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I'll never forget being in rookie minicamp, and it's in the book there where, I was in there. I had a chance to sit in with Coach Belichick's defensive staff meetings a couple times, and all these rookies were in there. I mean, big-time players from Syracuse, Michigan, all these guys, and Belichick started talking, and these guys started looking around the room at each other like they had no idea what was going on. So it was a totally different deal, but it definitely is. It is cool. It is neat to be able to motivate and inspire, family and friends, like you mentioned, as far as being able to get there and how to do it.
Now, I know that I've had experience meeting with some NFL players here and there. No big names, just kind of people who were actually in the game. But a lot of these guys are as big as dinosaurs, aren't they?
They really are. I mean, size-wise?
Size-wise, yes.
Yes. I'll never forget, there was a guy that we had come in that used to play for the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens named Orlando Brown. I don't know if you remember him at all.
I believe so, yes. Mm-hmm.
This guy's nickname was Zeus, and there's a good reason for it. I mean, one of my jobs was to do airport runs, to take these guys to the airport and to make sure they got on the plane okay and stuff. And I'll never forget when my boss, Scott Bioli, called me into the room and he said, hey, we got an airport run for you, and introduced me to Orlando Brown. This guy's hands were like twice the size of a catcher's mitt. I mean, it just engulfed my entire hand. I mean, and we got him in. All we had was a Crown Victoria to take him to the airport. We had to recline the seat all the farthest back it would go, and he barely fit into that car. It was amazing. But these guys...
It was a Mini Cooper, right?
Yeah, like that commercial with Shaquille O'Neal on it. They got to make a different kind of car. But I mean, these guys are huge. I mean, and it's amazing the type of athletes they are. I mean, these are guys that are 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". 320, 330, 340. They can, dunk a basketball. They can do the splits. They can run the 40 in, under 5 seconds. I mean, these aren't just your typical big guys. I mean, these are athletes who are big guys. I mean, it was incredible being around those types. And of course, me, sitting there at 5'11", about 160 pounds at the time, they definitely looked big to me.
It's a very inspiring book for people out there. I'm talking with Daniel Kelly. His book is Whatever It Takes, the true story of a fan making it into the NFL. Daniel, as you are realizing your dream has come true, there's that one day, and I know that someone like you, I know that I recognized it when it happened for me. What was that particular day like where the reality settled in, where you go, this is real, I can't believe I got here? What was that like for you?
Well, it brings tears to my eyes even thinking about it, Daniel. I was before I left, I came out to the mini camp for a month prior to making the move from Minnesota to New York, and my wife was back in Minnesota packing up and stuff. And I remember Scott Pioli had given me a project to do to research all the NFL general managers, the best GMs in NFL history, and look at their patterns and tendencies and stuff. And I spent the entire night working at the Jets facility at Wheatview Bank Hall in Long Island, and I was sitting there, and I started to have flashbacks going through my mind of growing up as a Redskins fan, watching Joe Gibbs and how he used to sleep in his office at Redskins Park, and here I am, the only person in the Jets building working all night, and that morning it was just sunrise, and I walked outside, and there was those big blocking sleds out by the practice field, and I got down in a three-point stance and hit into those a couple times, and of course didn't move them an inch. But and then I went out to midfield and looked at the pristine, bright yellow goalpost and lined up for an imaginary 50-yard field goal and what that would look like and what it looks like on TV and stuff, and just kind of seeing what it looked like from the kicker standpoint. And just that whole night and that whole morning, really, it's when it really hit me that I was in the National Football League, and it was that's when it hit me. That was an incredible memory.
I can imagine that anybody who's ever experienced that moment knows exactly what you're talking about there, and that's something that you've achieved a dream really worth achieving when that tear does come to your eye, because I don't think anybody's immune to that experience.
No, not at all. Yeah, it gives me chills to even think about it. I mean, that's all those years and all those people that said, you're never going to do this, including, my dad, like I'd mentioned, saying you're never going to amount to anything. And there I am standing there, at the Jets facility and working all night on that stuff. And it was an incredible experience to realize that I finally had arrived, like you said.
And one thing to let the listeners know about this book, whatever it takes, is that throughout the book you laden it with letters that you had sent, letters that you had received. And, again, what I really love about this, if you want to even put this in the realm of self-help, is that you immersed yourself immediately into what you wanted to pursue. As you do that, you create the reality inside, and that's where it all starts. It all starts with inside of yourself. And that's the easiest way to prove in the outside world that this is possible, by surrounding yourself with the reality that you're on your way. And it's going to happen. By actual scientific law, it must happen. It's guaranteed to happen. And I think sometimes when you take a look at the world of people who write books of inspiration and self-help and how to achieve your dreams and all these secrets, is they tend to use people, and I've said this, there was a guest I had on the show before who wrote this interesting book about, how your brain works, and it was, I can't remember the title of the book, but throughout he was showing people who achieved these really unique things, and they were people you never heard of. And that's not to lend any disrespect to you whatsoever, but you would be considered kind of one of those people nobody's really ever heard of, and you're a scout in the NFL, which is a very big deal. But the fact is, stories like that are important because it makes people feel like, that's the guy next door. Well, if he could do it, I know I can. But when you put the realm of, for instance, well, Einstein did this or Thomas Edison did this, I think a lot of times people are just tired of hearing of these people that, A, are 6 feet under fertilizing grass, and they achieve greatness that just seems too unattainable, so I'll just settle for what I have because that's good enough for me right now.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people struggle out there. I mean, there is nothing, I always want to emphasize, there was absolutely nothing that would suggest that I would make it into the scout as a scout in the National Football League with the New York Jets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, I was coming from a small town. There was just I didn't, my last name wasn't Lombardi because I didn't have that going for me. It was just through a lot of hard work. And the thing that comes to my mind, Daniel, is that everybody starts somewhere, and everybody we see, every year when, we watch the Super Bowl and they hoist up the trophy at the end of the game, everyone, probably sits there and thinks to themselves, hey, that guy just rolled out of bed this morning, and there he is. That's great. No, that's 30, 40 years of hard work, or those players that, do those kinds of things. That's 20 years in the weight room. So it really, it's and my dream kind of picked me. I didn't pick it. And,
that's sometimes how it happens, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about that. And so, it was just a dream. It was a vision. My favorite saying in life is vision is the art of seeing what's invisible to others. It's a quote I have in my book there. And that's what it was. And even with this book right now, I'm embarking in a new dream of getting this book out there. I sent out like a book proposal to every major publisher in the country. And, with me knocking on Bill Parcells' front doors, and I said, well, surely somebody's going to take a look at this. And all I got back was rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection letter. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And then a book agent called me from New York, and he said, hey, I really like what you're trying to do here. He said, but let me tell you something. He said, you and Bill Parcells could write the exact same book, and his is going to get published and yours isn't, because everybody in the world knows who he is, and nobody has any idea who you are. So it's just, that's how we all start.
Right.
That's how it begins. And I just read the other day that even Vince Lombardi, he coached I think 12 or 13 years before he got a shot to be in the NFL. You look at Bill Walsh started out as a high school football coach. Mike Holmgren, high school football coach. He's a guy that resonates probably with a lot of your listeners out there, being with the Seahawks and stuff, and all those years. And so you look at all these guys, and we got a lot of people in our building who are like that. I mean, Bill Belichick began his career getting hot dogs for Ted Marchibroda.
He put mustard on a hot dog better than anybody, and he's coaching now.
Absolutely, no question about that. But we had all kinds of guys like that in our building. I mean, Charlie Weiss, if you know him, the former head coach at Notre Dame,
right.
He met Bill Parcells at a health club. Eric Mangini, who was an NFL head coach for a number of years with the Jets and the Browns, he began as an intern in the equipment room picking up towels and stuff. I mean, everybody has these stories, that they started somewhere, and it's true for anyone who's listening right now, is you have to start somewhere, and if you have that vision, you have that dream, there is no question about it that you can achieve it.
Yes, and as I said, there's a science behind it that all you have to do is step in that direction, and scientifically it will work. It doesn't matter when it works, what matters is that it does. And the question is, do you have the perseverance, and do you really have the heart and the drive to get to where you want to go? And certainly, Daniel, you have that, and that's why your book, Whatever It Takes, I'm certain is going to get into the hands of a lot of people where they're going to finally say, hey, here's an everyday guy, he did it, I can certainly do it too. And I want to thank you for being on our program today. Before you go, though, tell our listeners how they can get a hold of a book.
They can go to the book's website at whateverittakesbook.com. It's also available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. If you type in Daniel Kelly, Whatever It Takes, New York Jets on Google, you'll see a whole page of resources and places that's available.
Very good. Daniel, thank you so much for being on our program today.
Hey, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Joy, for having me on today, and thank you all to all your listeners, and you can accomplish your dreams. If I can do it, you can do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. The book is Whatever It Takes. It's the true story of a fan making it into the NFL. We're going to have that posted on our blog so you can find out more about how you can get your own copy. Besides sitting there thinking about it, do something about your dream. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.